Yeah, so that leads us, I think, pretty naturally into the trade that I think was actually the most polarizing thing that happened in the Seahawks offseason so far, which is they traded the pick swaps the 78th for the 102nd pick, 152nd pick for the 179th pick. There's these trade value charts that you can put as much stock into them as you'd like to. I think it's roughly about a 5th round pick is like the plurality opinion. I don't know if it's the majority, but it's like somewhere between a late 4th in equivalent value given up to the ones that there's a couple that say that it's like the equivalent of giving up a 7th round pick that it just doesn't seem possible to me that that's how little value they gave up. So even if you go with the 5th round, which I think is a pretty reasonable middle ground of value, it's on the higher end of the most extreme opinions. They gave up a 5th round pick for Sam Howell, and the Seahawks Twitter went nuts. Everybody's talking about how Sam Howell sucks. This is too much to give up. People were saying they gave up a 3rd round pick for Sam Howell, which is like, that's also obviously not true. That's a pick swapped. They moved 24 picks back or whatever. And then the craziest opinion I saw was a guy who I guess I won't say him by name, but it's a guy who I think is like typically very measured and a little bit, if I'm being honest, like smug and pretty smart. And he was getting attacked because he didn't like the deal. But he used this like kind of intentionally inflammatory, they gave up a 3rd round pick as the reason for it, right? And then he goes, well, if John Schneider liked him so much, why didn't he pick him with a 5th round or a 4th round pick in, whatever, 2022 or whatever? I think it was the 2022 draft that Sam Howell came out of. And that is, to me, such an obvious, like, you are losing the argument with the majority, that you're going to make a point that's like the stupidest guy in your fantasy league's point about why he won't make a trade with you. Well, I used a 6th round pick on him. I need, you know what I mean? Like, that would be like saying Tom Brady was Tom Brady a 5th or a 7th round? He was a 7th rounder, right?
7th rounder.
Yeah, Tom Brady was a 7th round pick.
I think split the difference there. I think he was a 6th rounder.
Okay, so Tom Brady was a 6th rounder. No way I'd give up more than a 6th rounder for him. What? Yeah. That's so stupid. Sam Howell has so obviously exceeded the expected value of a 5th round quarterback pick. You know what I mean? Even if you don't love him.
Yeah, okay. Let's set the scene on the Sam Howell thing. First of all, last Tuesday, I'm going to Las Vegas for this Pac-12 tournament. Tuesday night, my buddy Bob Condota, who covers the Seahawks, is like, hey guys, I think I'm going to be able to make it down to Vegas. Now, this was a surprise for all of us. We did not expect him to join us on this trip. He's joined in the past, but sure. The NFL free agency coinciding with the Pac-12 tournament is a recipe for disaster for anyone who covers the NFL. And he says, you know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and book a plane and be down there on Wednesday. And he did it, which was shocking. Sure. He shows up on Wednesday. We were like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy is here. It felt like minutes after he landed. I don't know how much time passed, but it felt like minutes after he landed. The Seahawks go and acquire Sam Howell, and Bob's trip from that moment on is thrown completely out of whack. In true Bob fashion, for those of you who follow Bob, this man is constantly producing material. It's because even when he's on a trip, he is just working the entire time. We could not get him.
He has a lot of commitment that Alex does not have.
I was trying. Well, here's the thing. I'm the guy that gets all the tickets for the tournament games, and I keep them on my phone. And Bob is of the generation that transferring tickets to him is very difficult. So I was like, Bob, I got to get you to put the computer down. You got to come with me, or else this whole group can't get into the game. We're going to have a lot of trouble getting into the game, because if I try to transfer the ticket to you, like less than 5% chance you're getting into the game and meeting with us. So at certain times, as he's pounding away on his Sam Howell article, I'm getting him to stop doing that, cut the article, and come with me so I can go to a basketball game. So this Sam Howell trade kind of ruined everything in a way.
Sure.
It is a very intriguing trade. I actually think Sam Howell's pretty good. How I previously said I ascribe to Madden ratings only, as a joke a little bit. Kind of.
Sure.
I also ascribe to the fantasy relevance theory. If you're good, you're fantasy relevant. Well, Sam Howell last year was fantasy relevant. He was I remember about a year ago this time when Washington made the announcement that Howell was going to be their guy going into the season. The universal reaction, not just from me or from you, but everybody around the country who had an opinion on this sort of thing had generally a negative outlook on this. No one really thought Sam Howell was going to be the answer. They didn't think the Commanders were much of a football team, and they were just maybe trying to punt to the next season, save some money. But then he ended up actually being pretty good. The team was better than expected. Howell was pretty good. He faded toward the end of the year, but you could credit that to a lot of things. It could just be it's his first season playing. He hits a wall a little bit. Who knows what happened, but he ends up being a much better quarterback than anybody thought. It's interesting because he's actually younger than Michael Penix. So
younger than Bo Nix.
Really, yeah, he's younger than a lot of these guys that are in the draft this year. So if you thought the Seahawks were going to go in and draft a quarterback, I mean, they still might, because you just never know with the Seahawks. They're always looking for the best available talent, and by no means is Sam Howell a franchise quarterback, but it seems like he is their replacement at a value for the quarterback position, because if they're getting him for what equates to about a 5th round pick, that's great value for a guy who's already proven that he can start in this league. So it is an interesting acquisition. Obviously, we know that beyond this season, the future of Geno Smith is very cloudy, and you could even argue that if things don't go well with Ryan Grubb this year, that might necessitate a change at the quarterback position mid-season. So now you have a guy in Sam Howell who has started and done pretty well.
Right.
If you had a rookie that you drafted, you don't really know what to expect. I think, especially with a guy like Penix, people are going to be emotional about that pick. You have Ryan Grubb there, his OC. He's a hometown local hero in some ways. Of course, people are going to want him to play for Seattle. But again, we've talked about this before. No one knows Michael Penix better than this NFL football team because they have his OC there. They have the line coach there who was at Washington. And John Schneider, you have to assume, has had some sort of relationship there as well. And they must have seen something that they really liked in Howell. And
Sure.
He played pretty well. And I'm curious to see where it goes. I don't mind the trade at all, though. It did look bad a couple days later when the Steelers acquired Justin.
Well, we'll talk
Fields
about that in a
mere
second, because I want to finish up the Sam Howell conversation a little bit,
Sure.
because a lot of people are trying to pick Sam Howell apart as though a 5th round value on the trade would bring you back someone who is a completely perfect and accomplished quarterback. And people also said, I would have rather kept Drew Lock. Well, the one thing that is important to remember when you're talking about Damian Lewis, when you're talking about Jordan Brooks, when you're talking about Patrick Queen, who everyone had coming to Seattle for, by the way, more money than he got. Like, the linebacker market seemed a little bit colder than we expected going into the offseason. But one thing that's important to remember all the time is those guys can say no. Just even if you offer them more money, they are allowed to say no. They're under no obligation to come to your team if you offer them the most money. And Drew Lock could have left because Drew Lock wanted to leave. Like, but also he's going to make 5 times what Sam Howell makes. And the idea that you're going to trade the equivalent of a 5th round pick and what's going to come back in return is a flawless quarterback is an absolute fallacy. But yes, I will say, so I'm gonna start this by saying, if all things being equal, I like Justin Fields as a quarterback prospect significantly more than I like Sam Howell as a quarterback prospect. I think I was a huge Justin Fields fan coming out of college. I fall in love with these Ohio State quarterbacks. I love CJ Stroud too, which makes me look really smart. But even down back through Cardale Jones and Dwayne Haskins, who didn't turn into great, rest in peace, Dwayne Haskins, but guys that didn't turn into these incredible quarterbacks. I've been all in on those dudes. CJ Stroud is the one exception. One thing, by the way, a thing that the Seahawks seem to have realized is that they are not necessarily some seers of quarterbacks. They have some special ability to pick out quarterbacks. They want a bunch of medium probability options to come in and compete for the job. Someone win the job. That was the case. You forget that they brought in the early years of Pete, they brought in Charlie Whitehurst, Tavares Jackson, Matt Flynn, and Russell Wilson all in a very short stretch of time, not all on the roster at once, but like they were throwing shit at the wall to see what would stick. And that was the strategy. And at the end of that, you came away with this one pretty good quarterback named Russell Wilson. They're kind of going through that process again, where it's like they have a limited investment in Geno Smith. While he's here, they can actually. But what I was saying earlier that I didn't actually say was, I think they can compete for a playoff spot this year. And I think if a couple things go right on defense, the scheme is as good as we think, they could maybe make a run in the playoffs this year.
I would agree with that. I think the point that you've tried to make and you're kind of getting at is that they've found a lot of value in places that you don't typically find value. I mean, the most successful teams don't usually have a lot of value in their quarterback unless it's a guy who's on a rookie deal. They're trying to kind of do something different where they're not. I guess Sam Howell is still on his rookie deal, so you have that value there. But obviously the contract Geno Smith has is not prohibitive to signing other big deals here and there. They're trying to find
I think we might have hit. Do you think we've hit peak quarterback salary, or not salary? Obviously the salaries are going to continue to go up, but as a percentage of the cap, where it's like it's become unsustainable. It feels like at this point to have these guys. Kirk Cousins, the Vikings are going to be paying like $28 million in dead cap next year because Kirk Cousins goes to Atlanta, and obviously the Russell Wilson situation. Dak Prescott, who's like not really considered to be the top tier of quarterbacks, is going to end up getting the largest contract ever given to a quarterback, probably. Like, we've kind of reached that point, and the Seahawks are trying desperately to not get in that cycle, is what it seems like to me.
Well, I mean, you kind of have two options. You're either like building up this team of, lower contract or younger guys at all the other positions but quarterback, kind of what the Chiefs do. They're paying Pat Mahomes a ton of money, and then you see the talent that's around him. This guy somehow wins with a bunch of nobodies at receiver every year. Yeah. So you have that option, but you need a really special quarterback to make that work. Or you kind of do what the Seahawks are doing, where you're building up all the positions around the quarterback, and then you don't have to spend as much money there. I mean, we've seen both strategies work. The 2000 Ravens with Trent Dilfer at quarterback and, a generational defense, they won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But there's also other teams that have won with, quarterbacks taking up the biggest piece of the pie when it comes to their salary cap. So
there are limits to it, though. We've seen very few where that's like, I want to say the number is like 20% or something is the most. It's lower than you think because Mahomes and Brady have both been in years where they don't. The years they've won, I think Mahomes might have been the biggest one this year, actually.
Well, it's not conducive to a dynasty.
Sure.
It doesn't seem like it's conducive to a dynasty if you're trying to build around a position that's not quarterback. So that in and of itself, I guess, could be a problem. But also, I think what you see, like Atlanta's a good example, a team that's kind of built up, at least they've kind of reached the peak of what they can build up around the quarterback position. They've kind of filled it with a lot of talented young guys. And now they think, at least, that the thing that's going to push them over the top is a veteran free agent quarterback, which is why they go get Kirk Cousins. Now, you might not like Cousins, but if they truly believe that the quarterback position is all they need to get over the hump, then you have two options. You either go sign one of these vets that you can depend on, like a Cousins, or you draft a young guy and cross your fingers that he is going to be the next Patrick Mahomes, which is more likely to get you to the playoffs. Probably signing the vet, even though it's going to cost you a lot of money, because you just don't know what you're going to get from the rookie. So in a lot of ways, I could actually see the Seahawks playing themselves into a position like that in the future. When Geno's contract is up, if let's say you have Howell here all year, you see what you see from him in practice, maybe even starts a few games if Geno gets hurt or underperforms, whatever it might be. Maybe you just don't see a lot from him, but the rest of this team, the rest of this roster really performs well. You might come into next year and say, hey, we need to go find the next Kirk Cousins type, the veteran QB that's out there that's going to cost us a lot of money, but it's going to help us not only get to the playoffs, but potentially get to the Super Bowl.
So, a couple things about Justin Fields. First off, again, typically players who are under contract with a team don't have the ability to say no on a trade. Reports are that they gave Justin Fields 5 options of where they would trade him to, which is, but I mean, kudos to the Bears organization. I don't know why they would do that, to be honest with you, but that's supposedly what they did. So like acknowledge, I guess I'll acknowledge that before I say the next thing. I like Justin Fields better. I think his upside significantly higher. What I think, though, is to maximize Justin Fields, you would have to change the way your offense is constructed and change the way your playbook is constructed. You'd have to build your offense around Justin Fields. So that's not a guy that you come in to sit behind Geno for a year and maybe take over next year, because he's got 1 year left on his contract. And of course, he was a first-round pick. He has a fifth-year option. It's $25 million fully guaranteed. So you either have Justin Fields for 1 year as not your starter, and then you figure out if you're going to keep him, try to figure out a way to keep him. Maybe he leaves, maybe he doesn't. You can't really, based on that, start this roster reconstruction thing. So much like he's been fucked in Chicago, and I do think they've poorly managed his career. I do believe that. I think Chicago has a lot of blame in Justin Fields' struggles as a quarterback. Also, he hasn't completely struggled. He's been pretty good when he's played, but it's a really tough spot for him because he's such a unique player, and a team would have to really, really, really commit. And I think a team, it's either an option like where he's going to, where there's a 1 year starter. They signed Russell Wilson, a team that's going to run the ball a lot, that's probably going to use him in a way that's different from what the Seahawks need out of their quarterback in 2024. And then they're probably going to let him either go or not go, right? They gave up a 6th-round pick for him. I would not have wanted the Seahawks to bring him in and exercise his 5th-year option. Do you agree with that? The $25 million?
Yeah, it's a huge cost.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, I mean, first of all, I thought it was hilarious when they acquired Justin Fields after just signing Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
I guess there's kind of two schools of thought. Maybe you're thinking, okay, the Steelers' read on Russell Wilson is that he's a great veteran quarterback who can teach Justin Fields more nuance about the quarterback position that maybe he doesn't have. Justin Fields has proven to be a great running quarterback, but where he struggles, and you see it in games, is he will overthrow wide open receivers. Now, there's been, I think, the last half of last season, he kind of started improving on his passing. At least it felt that way, but just in general, through the course of his career, he hasn't been the best passer. So he does need to improve there, where Russell Wilson's always been a very good passer. So there are some things that potentially they could see as maybe working out in that relationship, but it also could simply just be a hedge. If Russell Wilson underperforms the way he did his first year in Denver, you have a guy right there that you can throw out into that lineup and depend on. Yeah. And because he's such a good runner, and because Pittsburgh likes to run the ball and they build around their line, they build around their running game, that gives you a threat that perhaps Russell Wilson doesn't give you. Because at this stage in his career, Russ is just not the runner that he once was, where Fields still is.
Yeah. I think that for me, it's when I found out that Justin Fields was going for just a 6th-round pick, I would have probably even still rather taken the 1 year risk on Justin Fields. I do think he's a little bit older. He's a little bit more expensive. You would have lost a little bit more cap space. Yeah,
you'd have lost. Sam Howell's 23.
I will say I think that Sam Howell's style of game is more likely to continue to be effective at 32 than Justin Fields potentially. I think there's a lot of risk in a guy that plays as physically and is dependent on taking contact on a regular basis as Justin Fields is. I think that the upside is crazy. I think his upside is Lamar Jackson plus. I think he's got more natural arm talent than Lamar Jackson and is a similar athlete. I think the upside's crazy. My preference probably would have been a 6th-rounder for Justin Fields. And then also, I would like to see the Seahawks, whether it's in the 1st round, whether it's in the 2nd round. I don't think they view 1st-round picks, again, because they don't view themselves as these mystical beings who can see a great quarterback out of nowhere. They just want a bunch of 30% probability options. I could see them taking Michael Penix or someone of that type, whoever that is, if J.J. McCarthy fell to him. I've started to really like J.J. McCarthy, by the way. The only 2 quarterbacks I want out of this draft I don't think that Jaden Daniels is going to make it to him. I like Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix. That's my me saying that I know quarterbacks. Those are my 3 guys. and probably McCarthy and Penix overall. But that's to say, like, if I think they would draft either of those guys potentially if they viewed them as good value, and even though they're first round picks, be like, yeah, they could also be Rashad Penny. Like, they've used first round picks on Rashad Penny and Jermaine Ifedi and Bruce Irvin, and what was I can't even think of the fucking guy's name anymore. The dude, he was like a defensive end that was the size of a defensive tackle that never Collier, LJ Collier.
LJ Collier.
Like, these are guys that were like rotational depth on those teams, and they weren't like, these guys have to pan out or we are fucked. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I totally get it. You're right. I mean, Fields' upside is very much higher. It's,
to me, the difference isn't great enough. The difference isn't great enough. You get 2 years of Howell for basically free, for essentially veterans minimum. The difference isn't great enough for me to be mad at the organization for having a slightly different opinion on where these guys rank and who fits the offense better.
Obviously, we know Justin Fields is a true dual threat quarterback who has had some amazing rushing games. You know, last year Sam Howell rushes for 263 yards. He has 5 rushing touchdowns. So he's not like a stiff back there. He's not a true pocket passer. He can scramble if he needs to. I guess maybe he'd be more of like a Brock Purdy type, you know, when he has to run.
I was going to make that comparison because you and I had the... Yeah.
Yeah, he's squirrely. When he has to run out of the pocket, he's running for a first down, basically. So he's still mobile enough that it gives you maybe a little bit more versatility at that position than you typically see. So to just think that Sam Howell is like this guy that you can write off, to me, is foolish. You know, the age thing matters, the mobility matters, and the fact that he started already and proven he can play in this league matters. All those things are important.
I think the Baker Mayfield comparisons I've seen are interesting because, one, he kind of looks like Baker Mayfield a little bit, which I think is a thing that people do. I also, by the way, it was funny, we didn't talk about it, but there was one of these ladies, the like angry white liberal ladies on that's a Seahawks fan, was like, oh, great, another white quarterback for the Seahawks fans to root for to take over for Geno. And then someone was like, well, he's actually Korean. And then she's like, it doesn't matter. Who gives it? Like,
it does matter.
Yeah,
does
but
matter.
I mean, probably to his Korean family, it matters a little bit. But yeah, it's just so funny how white ladies could say a thing that would be otherwise just deemed overtly racist. But in the world we live in, we're so twisted up on what is and is not racist. But anyway, that's a huge diversion, and you have a hard out in about 5 minutes. So, yeah, ultimately, I think that the thing about Sam Howell, what makes him like Baker Mayfield also is cost of acquisition was low, and then it's a really hard thing for me to imagine that in 2 years, when he's coming up on a would-be extension, they also will have the option to franchise him. If he completely explodes, they could franchise him 2 years from now. Sure. But they could probably sign him to a reasonable extension. Is 4 years, $100 million for your starting quarterback? If Sam Howell has ascended to that point, he's not signing that contract right now, but like if he ascends to the point where he's a top 10 starter in the NFL, if he's Geno Smith level, but he's 26 years old at the time, 4 years, $100 million is like nothing. Obviously, you make that deal.
Yeah, it's interesting because a quarterback's draft status and pedigree seems to follow him forever. Justin Fields will probably always be more expensive than Sam Howell just based on where they were drafted. Now, there's the rarities, the Russell Wilsons who play so well that
Kirk Cousins.
You know, yeah, that they're gonna exceed their draft stock and how they were rated back then. But, you know, for these younger guys, it seems like at least for that first contract, where you were drafted still matters. And that becomes a real thing, man.